Hello and welcome to Leila's Talk Show. I'm your host, Leila Vahabzadeh, and today I'm here with Marc Forby. Marc Forby is a feature film producer and director. Hi Marc, how are you today?
Very good, thank you for having me.
When did you come to Hollywood and from where?
I studied film at a university in Canada called Queen's University.
How long have you been directing?
Well, I haven't answered your first question. So I actually started in the business in Toronto with a company called Alliance that did movies with David Cronenberg and Adam McGowan. And then to answer your question, they moved me down here to Hollywood in 1996.
When did you decide to get into the entertainment industry?
Probably around 15 or 16. I was watching a lot of, I was at boarding school at the time, so I spent a lot of weekends going down to an art theatre in Bristol. And one of the first films I saw was called Betty Blue. It's a French film. And I kind of got hooked at that stage and bought my first Super 8 camera at 16 and started making short films.
What does your job entail?
Well, I have been producing for many years when I was an executive, and these days I'm mostly focused on directing, which obviously is the creative vision behind a movie. And you have several department heads that report to you, and if you're a good director, you'll choose wisely because they always know their field better than yours. But usually they work with you to see your vision.
Was there ever someone who inspired you to love movies when you were younger?
That's a very good question. I don't think there was anyone in particular, but my parents used to watch a lot of David Lean movies, like Dr. Zhivago, and I always loved those broad epics. And so my first feature film as a director was very much influenced by those films.
Did your family support your dreams?
Yeah, they didn't get in the way of it. My father's always been extremely supportive, as is my mother. Yeah, no, they probably should have warned me against it. It's not the easiest business, but...
Is there a particular movie that you could call your favorite that you've directed?
Well, I've just segued into directing just a few years ago, so I've just completed a film last November that was shot in New Mexico. That is a wonderful road movie about an autistic young man who kidnaps a washed-up country star to help an ailing friend with a private concert. So it's very much along the lines of sort of Little Miss Sunshine, or sort of what I would call a dramedy. So we'll see how that comes out. And the film I did, my first film, Princess Kaiulani, which was a film about the last princess of Hawaii and the U.S. overthrow of the Hawaiian Islands. That one I'm very proud of. We shot that for just $9 million, and it looks, I think pretty spectacular. And Lionsgate took it out theatrically, and it tells, a watershed moment in U.S. history that nobody knows about.
What are your favorite and least favorite types of films to direct?
Well, as I said, I love drama, I love history, I love quirky comedy, I would call it. I really do love movies by David O. Russell. I probably would never direct a broad comedy or a horror film. I'd be interested in doing something supernatural like The Others, Yeah, I think that sort of encompasses. So, I'd like to do a smart sci-fi film. That would be.
What are some bad habits that you've seen actors have, and how do you help them overcome these habits?
Another very good question. There's sort of a multitude of bad habits, I suppose. I mean, some actors have personal tics that they have to work on getting rid of. I mean, that's the famous one is George Clooney in his early days. He had like a head twitch that directors had to work hard on getting rid of. But you know, for the most part, I've been very fortunate. I've worked with some very, very, very talented actors. So I think my most important job as a director is the casting portion of the filmmaking, because if you cast the right person, it makes your job a lot easier.
Have you ever encountered someone with absolutely no talent, and then how did you break it to them?
Probably not in the industry, probably people aspiring to get into the industry. I don't think I've ever been in a position where I've had to... I think people find their way, ultimately. I'm really not one for killing people's dreams, because it might lead to something similar to acting or close to acting. So I'd certainly be willing to and have worked with actors to sort of work on their weaknesses. But the key thing about acting, the most important thing about acting is forgetting about yourself. Just having the confidence just to inhabit that character.
What projects are you currently working on?
Well, like I mentioned, there's that little indie I just did in New Mexico that's in post-production. I'm trying to get a supernatural thriller in the works based on a book that would be set in Scotland. Let me see what else. I'm attached to direct an interesting biopic about a very famous British sculptor called Jacob Epstein, whose career sort of spanned the 20s, 30s, and World War II. He was Jewish, living in London, and he was up against, you know, the Catholic Church, and he was a very fascinating character. So it's a really good actor's piece, and we're currently trying to cast that right now.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what would you like to accomplish in the future?
Gosh, well, without sounding glib, I'd like to be able to provide for my family. It's a very tough business, especially on the indie side. So, you know, first and foremost, it would be nice just to sort of have enough success just to keep working and doing what I love. And in terms of the movies I want to make, I think that's continually evolving, as we all do.
What advice can you give to our students who want to get into the directing and film business, and where do you suggest they start?
I've been asked that question many, many times. There really is no single way into the film industry. Everybody sort of has their own journey. You know, some people who sort of want to get more on the executive side might start in the mailroom of either an agency or a production company on a studio lot. Somebody who wants to get on the production side might be better off interning or helping out on non-union movies, meaning independents that are not obligated to hire union members. So yeah, I mean, there really is no single way. I think you have to sort of make a distinction of, do I want to be an executive or do I want to be on the creative side, because that's certainly a decision you have to make early on. I started on the executive side. I started at a studio in Toronto, but then I segued back into production because that's where I wanted to be ever since I was 16. So, you know, and it was valuable. As a director, I have a keen understanding of how films are financed and how the distribution works, which a lot of directors are not privy to. So, you know, I came in from one side and ended up in the other.
Tell me about your most proudest achievement in your career to date.
Well, I think that's a similar topic as what's my favorite film. I mean, to date, I would have to say Princess Kaiulani would be. I mean, it was an impossible film to make because it had a a female lead, which is very hard to finance. She was a native figure, so you really run up against trouble trying to raise millions of dollars when you're taking on topics like that, and just to be able to raise awareness about that particular chapter in American history, which doesn't shed a particularly positive light on the United States. I think that was really something to be proud of. And then there's my personal life, and there's great prides there too, but we're not here to discuss that.
Was there ever a film that you directed that was completely miscast? And if so, how did you manage to sort it out?
No, I can't say that I worked on anything that was miscast. I've been very fortunate in that department. Has
anyone who you've directed ever gone on to become a big star?
Well, let's see. Koryanka Kilcher is, she was already a little bit of a star by the time we hired her, because she'd done Terrence Malick's in The New World, where she played Pocahontas. Barry Pepper is sort of a perennial actor that's probably not a household name, but you've seen him in movies dating back to Saving Private Ryan. I think because I work in the independent sector, I work with quality actors that are probably not on the Clooney level. This last one I did it had a mixed bag. It starred Bruce Campbell from the Evil Dead movies, so he's quite famous in his universe, and has a huge following in conventions. And then I had a young star called James Freshville from Australia who did a movie called Animal Kingdom, and he's definitely on the rise and someone to watch out for. He might become a big name. I had wonderful actresses, Annabeth Gish, Missy Pyle, who just done Gone Girl. So I think the answer is not huge stars, but actors that directors really want to work with.
Can you tell me a little bit about why Princess Kaiulani was so impossible to direct?
Well, it wasn't impossible to direct. It was nearly impossible to finance. And had we not financed it before the market crash, it probably never would have gotten made post-2008. But there was legislation in Hawaii. There was a tax shelter for high-tech corporations, and we used that money. And obviously, those companies in Hawaii had a keen interest in getting this story out there. In terms of directing, no, I had an amazing crew. I had Gabriel Beristain as my director of photography. He was the DP on The Green Mile, many great movies. So that made my job a lot easier. And since I'd written the piece and researched it for several years, I had a very clear vision of how to make it. The finished film wasn't quite what I had written. There was some producerial involvement in tailoring more of a love story, and obviously budget concerns. So a lot of the beginning of the movie was truncated, but nonetheless, I think it turned out quite lovely, and it's actually a good film for adults your age, because it's a good segue from the Princess Diaries to sort of the harsh realities. So it of the world, and it caters really, really well to high schoolers actually.
Can I please ask you some fun questions?
Mm-hmm.
If you could go any place in the world, where would it be and why?
Any place in the world. Wow. I think I'd like to see China, for the countryside, and I've traveled. I'm a citizen of 4 nations: England, France, Canada, and the US, and they're all cousins of the same family. But yes, definitely some travel in Asia and India and even Russia would be just to see something completely different.
What is your dream job besides film?
I've always had a love for automobiles, but I don't know that I would want to work in that world, but I certainly enjoy them. And one of my best friends from Queen's University in Canada went on to create a car company called Tesla. And so that was fun talking to him in the early days about sort of the vision of having an electric car. I probably should have joined him on that pursuit.
If you were on a deserted island, which 3 things would you bring and why?
My family, sushi, and a good bed.
What do you like to do on weekends?
Definitely that's family time for me. We like to sort of get out and be active and be together, and it's time for reading and watching your favorite show and just forgetting about the business. I think it's healthy to just to take your head out of the business. Otherwise you can go a little crazy.
Can you tell me a little bit about a major obstacle that you have faced?
A major obstacle. Yeah, I on the last film I did have a problem with a producer who was a friend of mine for 17 years. We just didn't have the same vision for the film. So that was tough, but I think, in fairness, we were both fighting for what was really a terrific script. So it all comes from a good place. But it's, and you know, I'm not the first director to run into that kind of problem. But that's a tough one.
How would your friends describe you?
How would my friends describe me? Gosh. Probably things I probably shouldn't mention on this show. I know your mother would say very nice things about me.
What advice can you give me?
Well, you've got the enthusiasm, and that's 90% of it, because it can be a very long and hard journey into entertainment, and it's not for the weak. It will challenge you in many ways. So you have to know that it's what you want to do and fight for it, and you'll get there.
What is your favorite food?
Well, I mentioned sushi already, and aside from that I would say Indian food, and I've quite fallen in love with Persian food lately, so I've been cooking with a ton of herbs lately. I do love to cook. So,
what do you love about life?
About life?
Yes.
The miracle of being here, I suppose. We have to remind ourselves that it's truly a miracle that we're even here in this moment. And just being able to share that with people. And I'm slowly learning at 44 that giving is better than taking. I mean, that sounds all obvious, but it takes a while to really understand that.
What do you love about yourself?
What I love about myself? Being a father, being a responsible father. I think that's probably the most important job that you can have.
Thanks, Marc, for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. We're all done already?
Yes.
Okay.
And thank you for watching. I'm your host, Leila Vahabzadeh, and this is my show, Leila's Talk Show. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.